All right, well, welcome to the first day of peer review presentations for GEOG 596A Spring 2 term of 2022. I'm Jim Detweiler, the faculty lead for the Geospatial Programming Certificate, for those who don't know me. We have a relatively short schedule today. We've got 3 presentations. Just a few reminders before we get to them. Presenters, you're going to have 25 minutes to give your talk, followed by 5 minutes of questions. If anyone has a question for a presenter, please enter it into the chat box, and you might consider typing your question into maybe a separate text editor and then copying and pasting it into the chat box when the presenter wraps up so you don't distract them during their talk. Presenters, please read any questions out loud so that anyone watching the recording will know what you're responding to. And for the 596A students, we're expecting you to provide each speaker with some constructive feedback. And any other folks who are attending are certainly invited to do so. Also, I'll post a link to the peer review form in the chat box. All right, so first up, we have MGIS student Joel Neuswanger, who's going to talk to us about water quality data and a dashboard for monitoring it. Joel, are you all set to share your screen?
Yes, I am. Are you seeing it now?
Yes, I am. Very good.
All right. So thank you. Hello, I'm Joel Neuswanger. I work for the Great Lakes Water Authority, which is the municipal water supplier for the Metro Detroit area here in Michigan. I work as a chemist in the water quality laboratory. So at GLWA, the IT and asset management teams are currently working on upgrading the organization to a modern GIS ecosystem, but there are many areas that still need to be implemented. So the project that I'm proposing is to develop a GIS dashboard to improve the accessibility and utilization of the data that the water quality team produces. And I've developed this project idea with a lot of support from my advisor, Andy Yenja. As a quick overview here of my presentation, I will begin by giving some background information about water treatment, distribution, and quality testing. I will then present the data accessibility problem that I perceive and the goals of my project. Next, I will lay out an overview of the methodologies that I intend to use. And finally, I will present the anticipated results, a proposed timeline for my work, and a possible presentation venue for my project proposal or presentation. So drinking water is delivered from the water treatment plant to the customers via a network of pipes, reservoirs, and pumping stations that are referred to as the distribution system. It's a very complex network that can have a dendritic structure, as in the left-hand example, where the pipes follow branching paths, or a looped structure, as in this right-hand example, which has a lot more redundancy. The quality of the water evolves as it moves through the system at rates that are highly impacted by numerous variables, such as the material and size of the pipe, the rate of water consumption, and the temperatures. On the water quality team, our work is to verify that the water that comes out of the tap in someone's home is the same high quality as when it was fed into that distribution system by the water treatment plant. This is accomplished through regular monitoring of water quality parameters at sample sites throughout the distribution system. These tests provide a valuable source of information for maintaining a safe and aesthetically pleasing water supply, for planning infrastructure projects, and for meeting regulatory requirements. So the most frequent water quality parameters that are tested for routine distribution system samples are the bacterial assessments, disinfection residual, turbidity, and fluoride. Every time a sample is collected in the field, the residual concentration of disinfection chemical in the water is recorded. Water treatment plants that use chemical disinfection maintain a residual level of it in their distribution system in order to inhibit the regrowth of microorganisms in the finished water as it's delivered through the system. The chemicals that make up this residual break down over time, resulting in a decreased ability to suppress the regrowth and the formation of disinfection byproducts that are often harmful chemicals. So a very low concentration of this disinfection residual can indicate potential problems in the water distribution system. Turbidity refers to very fine particles of mineral and organic matter that are suspended in the water. One of the main goals of water treatment is to remove turbidity because these particles offer shelter to microorganisms, react with the disinfection chemicals to create harmful byproducts, and reduce the overall aesthetic quality of the water. And of course, fluoride is monitored to ensure a low level is maintained for dental health without exceeding a level that could cause harmful side effects. For the bacterial tests, the main assessments that are performed are for coliform bacteria and heterotrophic plate counts. The tests for the presence of coliform bacteria are used to detect contamination from sewage and other sources of potentially harmful microorganisms. While most forms of E. coli, the main type of coliform bacteria, are harmless to humans, they are present in all mammal feces and survive well under the conditions found in a drinking water distribution system. So they are a good stand-in for all other pathogens from biological contamination. This test usually has a dual binary result of the presence or absence of coliform bacteria and the presence or absence of E. coli specifically. Community water supplies are required by EPA or state regulators to collect and certify a certain number of coliform samples per month according to the population served. And this makes up the majority of the testing that we perform at the water quality laboratory. In samples where the disinfection residual level is too low, a heterotrophic plate count, or HPC, is often used to quantify the level of bacterial regrowth. This process involves culturing the sample in a selective media and counting the number of colonies that form on the plate. Results from this test represent the general microbiological activity of the water, not necessarily a specific contamination, but it can be associated with aesthetic issues and the buildup of biofilms. So the data provided by these water quality parameters can allow modeling and auditing of the distribution system and can indicate malfunctions and needed improvements. But for these functions to be served efficiently, the data needs to be readily available and users need to be equipped with appropriate processing tools. In my experience, municipalities are often not achieving these ideals. Data has often been stored in various spreadsheets or databases, accessible only to the expert users within the water quality team. The data is also devoid of its spatial context when it is stored with only a reference to the sample site number. To use the data, one must be familiar with its format, know where to look up its related information, such as the sample point addresses, and manually perform needed statistics and reporting. I'm proposing a GIS dashboard as a potential solution to these issues that would be user-friendly and visualize the spatial temporal context. A GIS dashboard provides geospatial analytics in an intuitive, user-friendly interface that is easily to interpret visually. The ArcGIS dashboard's platform is very flexible, lending itself to many styles, such as these examples from Esri. The example of an operational dashboard in the top right can show events, projects, and assets in real time for operations. In the bottom left example, a tactical style dashboard provides analytics of historical data and visualizes trends. The strategic layout example in the bottom right displays goals and performance metrics for decision support. So the geospatial awareness provided by a GIS dashboard can reveal relationships and patterns that would require extensive analysis to detect when viewing the data without GIS. And the intuitive design makes the data more accessible to non-experts, such as the management professionals outside the water quality team. The goal of this project is to develop a GIS dashboard that will improve the accessibility of the water quality data. Further, the project aims to meet this organizational need while working within the constraints of internally available data and software, yet also showing the full capabilities of modern GIS technology. The project will be an example that is accessible to any utility that wants to pursue greater utilization of their data resources, not requiring extensive outside resources, meeting real needs, and providing high quality technology. The methodology of my project will be organized into 6 sections. First, a needs assessment and preparation of the data, followed by initial prototyping of the dashboard interface and modeling of system connectivity. Finally, the process of developing the dashboard, and then a demonstration of the functionality. In the needs assessment will include background research, user interviews, and exploration of the available water quality data. The goal of the needs assessment is to clarify who the end users of the product will be and what decisions and activities they engage in that can be supported by improved data accessibility. It'll answer questions like, what data is most important to users, and what investigations could be enhanced by including spatial and temporal information in the analysis. User interviews will be conducted with current users of the data within the water quality team, with interested parties from other departments that might benefit from the data, and the GIS team, which would be administrating the completed application. This assessment of user needs will allow prioritization of features, planning of automation, and development of a user-friendly application. The exploration of the available water quality data will give insight into the potential applications of the data for new and improved investigations within the water quality team, as well as utility for other departments which have not previously had access to the data. To begin, it will be important to ensure uniform formatting of the data and an understanding of the attributes of the dataset. Georeferencing of the sample sites will have been completed as part of the ongoing GIS upgrade, but tables of archived test results may still need to be joined to the corresponding sites. This process will need to be automated so that new data is continuously added to the live dashboard. The design of the data pipeline will be coordinated with the GLWA GIS team, since they will be supporting the completed application, and metadata will be kept up to date to document the requirements. The data will be made available to the widgets in the dashboard as a web service within the ArcGIS Enterprise ecosystem server. Initial layouts of the user interface will be designed using wireframing, which is an abstract sketch of the layout and features. These sketches of layout options will be reviewed with potential users for input on user experience. Based on this, a minimally functional prototype will be developed in ArcGIS dashboards. This will likely only contain a static map and placeholder values for some of the data displays, with the focus being on the design of the user interface and visual layout. This prototype will be put through more user testing to provide further information for the final steps of model development and dashboard design about what features and content are most important to users. For a robust geospatial analysis of the data, a model of the system's spatial and temporal connectivity is needed. While two data points may appear to be in close proximity, they may not be directly connected by the pipe network. As you can see in this example, the two green dots are directly neighboring properties, but there are miles of water main between them in the network model. In addition, there are often many routes that work in combination, and rates of water movement depend on the diameter of the pipe in relation to the total water demand in the area. Sometimes isolation valves are closed for work or left closed by accident, introducing uncertainty, even with the network model. There are a number of techniques for handling the modeling of such complex systems, including aggregation or clustering of data. These simplify the network to reduce the computational burden of the model and allow inference into system performance. The final methods in this section will depend on the success and computational requirements of the model, and this analysis may need to be limited to small regions of the system at a time. With the data prepared, user interface designed, and network connectivity modeled, the final development stage will be to produce the fully functional dashboard. This will mean incorporating the system model and the input from initial user interviews to build out all the planned features and automation. Data displays will be linked to the dataset and model and programmed to calculate the desired metrics. Controls for viewing and auditing the system will be implemented in the interactive map. Instructions, explanations, and hints will be provided throughout the application to improve accessibility. This will be an iterative process of development and user testing feedback to ensure good user experience and stability. Metadata and documentation will also be created for the final application, describing the data requirements and functionality. Once development is complete, the dashboard will be used to perform an initial analysis of the water quality data to demonstrate the functionality of the application. The dashboard will be used to display desired metrics over relevant regulatory periods, prepare necessary reports, and guide future compliance. The modeling capabilities will be able to highlight problem areas in the system and identify high-risk features. Statistical inference can reveal areas where the sampling plan may need to be improved, or regions where high water age requires additional flushing schedules. This will provide an opportunity for a final fine-tuning of usability, as well as material evidence of the value and contribution of the dashboard to the organizational needs laid out in the needs assessment. The expected results from this project are the web service of the water quality dataset, the system model, the web GIS dashboard, and reports based on the initial analytical demonstration. The operational GIS dashboard and its dependencies will be available to potential users within the subject municipality through its ArcGIS Enterprise portal. While only generalized features of the water distribution system can be shared publicly due to Department of Homeland Security restrictions, the development process, design principles, and proven capabilities of the dashboard will be presented at a relevant industry conference. For a rough timeline of my planned methods, I will spend May developing and implementing the needs assessment and completing the data preparation. I plan to spend 3 weeks in June prototyping the dashboard and conducting initial user testing, and then 3 more weeks developing the network model. I will then take about a month to develop the final dashboard, followed by conducting the functionality demonstration. The final month is devoted to preparing reports and my presentation, which should be ready by the 21st of September, the date of the earliest conference that I am considering. A likely conference for my project presentation is the Michigan Communities Association of Mapping Professionals conference on September 21st through 23rd. Here are citations for my proposal. And with that, I'm ready for any questions.
All right, thank you, Joel. That was a very nice presentation. And yeah, let's open it up for any questions. Looks like Don has one in the chat box, Joel.
Should I stop sharing my screen? Okay, so Don's question is, you mentioned relationships and patterns displayed in the GIS dashboard. Do you expect to display trends in water quality from previous years, or does this focus on real-time data? And the answer is yes, it will be historical data. The Great Lakes Water Authority took over control of this area about 5 years ago. So we have high quality data going back 5 years. The data beyond that is a little bit hit or miss. And so I'm not confident on my ability to project everything back 10, 15 years, but for what is there, I'll be doing that. Next question from Fritz Ketzler is, I'd be interested in hearing a bit more about how the end user will build the dashboard elements, or will the available dashboard elements be fixed? My current idea is that the elements will be fixed. based on the functionality that is needed. If there's a large diversity in the functionality that is needed, it may be necessary to have multiple views that you can switch between to switch out elements, but I don't think there's a way of having the end user customize what they're seeing on the board. Another question is, will no aspect of the dashboard be available for public viewing? And in the state that I would get it to, the answer is no, it would be for internal use. But the amount of work that would be required to make some parts of it public facing would not be very much. ArcGIS, of course, has the ability to regulate user access based on permission levels. And so you could have some of the data available. Like there's a large portion of our data we are required to share with the public anyway, and we send out as monthly letters. So that part could be shown to the public in a way that doesn't violate privacy or anything. It would just be another step of design work that would be needed. And would be beyond my scope to work with their organizational permissions and stuff.
I had a question, Joel. You showed some examples of other dashboards that have been developed using Esri's technology. I was wondering if you had an opportunity to look for dashboards that have been developed on your specific topic to see if maybe there's anything that you could learn from what others have done.
Yeah, I looked, I didn't find an exact match as far as what I'm doing. I do have some pretty good examples of dashboards that have been developed in our organization for other data, like the asset management people were the first to adopt MGIS, and so they have some dashboards. So as far as like stylistically and whatnot, I can try to match them a little bit, but I didn't find specifically water quality data dashboards that have been made before.
All right. Any other questions for Joel? All right, well, good job, Joel. Thank you for a nice presentation. And in just a moment, I'm going to post the link to the peer review form so that folks can give Joel and the other presenters some feedback. But next up, we've got Don Hagedorn, who's going to talk to us about pollinators in urban areas.
Everyone see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. Hello. My name is Don Hagedorn. My academic advisor for this term is Dr. Christina Grosinger. And the title of my capstone project proposal for the master's program in geographic information systems will be an analysis of landscape foraging resources for pollinators in urban areas. The presentation will begin with an introduction to pollination, pollinators, pollinator significance, and the threats against them. I will then discuss the goals and objectives for this project, as well as review previous tools used for analyzing landscape resources, including the Lonsdorf Index and Bscape. I then plan to introduce data sources and technology, proposed methodologies, some of the challenges and limitations I expect to encounter the anticipated results for the project, and my projected timeline. Additionally, I will briefly describe future applications of geographic information systems and remote sensing, and finish with a list of potential presentation venues. Pollination. Pollination is the process of transporting pollen from the stamen, the male part of a flower, to the stigma, the female part of a flower. This transfer of pollen is essential in plant fertilization to further produce seeds, fruit, and additional plants for the next generation. Pollination can either occur through self-pollination, wind and water pollination, and vector pollination, which is also another name for pollinators. Pollinators travel between plants carrying pollen, the genetic material necessary for reproductive systems of flowering vegetation. Pollinators can include bees. There are roughly over 4,000 species of bees in the United States, with honeybees being the prominently managed pollinator. An image of a honeybee is seen in the lower right image. Pollinators can also include other insects, such as flies, butterflies, moths, beetles, and wasps. The upper right image actually represents a hawk moth. Pollinators can also include birds, bats, and there are a minimum of 437 bee species in Pennsylvania alone. Between 75 and 95% of flowering plants use pollinators, and that equates to roughly 180,000 plant species and 1,200 crops. As primary pollinators, honeybees supply around $34 billion in agricultural pollination. The image to the right is a graphic taken from the Pennsylvania Pollinator Protection Plan, which offers recommendations for best practices to expand and support pollinator populations. As displayed in the graphic, the listed commodities and crops contribute to about $260 million to Pennsylvania annually. This is significant because of Pennsylvania's variety of diverse landscapes, including agricultural, natural, urban, suburban, and roadsides. Honeybees are also significant because they can act as biological indicators to monitor ecosystem health due to their sensitivity to habitat degradation from agricultural intensification, urbanization, deforestation, and climate change. Declining honeybee health endangers honey production and pollination services. These declines are due to various factors, including disease, pesticide use, and habitat degradation, which causes a loss of floral resources that bees depend on for food and nutritional requirements. I wanted to take a moment to briefly discuss my personal interest and investment in my capstone proposal. For starters, honeybees are sensitive to environmental and climate changes and can act as biological indicators based on their community and species abundance. Secondly, floral resource availability. As a second-year beekeeper, I chose to prioritize and plant my yard and garden with plant species beneficial to honeybees in Georgia, such as cosmos, thyme, basil, and butterfly bushes. While these varieties did attract a lot of pollinators, including various species of bees, butterflies, wasps, and beetles, I found the honeybees favored the 2 crepe myrtle trees on the property, which leads to my final point: opportunities in urban development. Watkinsville, Georgia is an Arbor Day Foundation, nationally recognized tree city community committed to environmental change and maintaining tree cover. Living less than a half mile from downtown Watkinsville, with new developments such as Wire Park, a future conversion of a wire manufacturing plant to a mixed-use community development and green space means there is extraordinary value in choosing trees beneficial to all area pollinators. There are two main goals and objectives for this project. The first goal is to generate an interactive map of low, average, and high floral resource availability in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. To accomplish this, I plan to identify and categorize trees as either nectar producing, pollen producing, and non-beneficial for pollinators within a 1 square kilometer grid across the city of Pittsburgh. Additionally, I plan to calculate the proportion of nectar, pollen, and both nectar and pollen trees to the total number of trees in each sample grid. The second goal is to determine the proportion of Pittsburgh registered apiaries that are in low, average, and high resource areas. Specifically, I will determine if each registered apiary is in a high, medium, or low resource grid calculated in the above goal. This will allow me to evaluate the distribution of apiaries and further ask the questions as to whether beekeepers are placing their colonies in high resource areas or if they're being placed anywhere. Flowering plants and trees offer varying amino acids, vitamins, carbohydrates, and proteins contained within pollen and nectar, further stressing the significance in providing a diverse variety of forage resources for honeybees as a scarcity in floral resources richness leads to a lack in biodiversity necessary for honeybee and pollinator communities. Pollen provides the necessary proteins, lipids, and macronutrients, while nectar offers the essential sugars for foraging. The upper image displays the range of different nectars, while the lower image displays the same for different pollen sources. One of the most commonly used indices for capturing floral resource quality for bees is the Lonsdorf index. Derived from expert opinion, assigning scores of floral resources averaged for each land use category, the Lonsdorf index assumes plant communities according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture cropland data layer updated annually. As seen in the right image, there are higher floral resources scores transitioning from spring to fall, with mixed crops like corn, barley, and oats maintaining low floral resource scores year-round. A problem and/or limitation of the Lonsdorf index is that it is not assessing actual plant communities, but assuming them based on the cropland data layer at a 30-meter spatial resolution. Beescape is an ongoing project created by pollinator researchers and made available to beekeepers, land managers, and gardeners, and is a widely accessible tool for monitoring landscape forage quality and pollinator health. As seen in the image, there are two ranges, a 3-kilometer and a 5-kilometer radius extending from the center point. As you expand beyond 3 kilometers, you can notice less insecticide use and more natural landscapes, further indicating the success of Beescape in agricultural landscapes. According to Sponsler and co-authors, research suggests that bees use trees in cities and urban environments. This was observed and recorded using the methods of colony weight monitoring and DNA metabarcoding of pollen. The data sources and materials I plan to use include tree data obtained from the City of Pittsburgh Department of Public Works Forestry Division, a list of trees that provide pollen and nectar for bees. This information will come from a variety of sources, including the research done in the Sponsler article and the Philadelphia Beekeepers Guild, and also GPS coordinate locations for registered apiaries in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, obtained from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. These statistics, computations, and map creation will be completed using ArcGIS Pro software and ArcGIS Online to further embed the map. For the proposed methodologies, for starters, I plan to categorize all trees by their resource production, either pollen or nectar. Trees capable of producing pollen include maple, honey locust, and Japanese pagoda, and trees capable of producing nectar also include Japanese pagoda, black locust, and tulip poplar. The reason I included the Japanese pagoda twice is because this species is capable of producing high qualities of both pollen and nectar. I will need to distinguish each species by their most important resource production before I can further categorize. The second step in my proposed methodology is to extract latitude and longitude and species information from the CSV file obtained from the Pittsburgh Department of Public Works. I will then create a 1x1 kilometer grid across the city of Pittsburgh. And for each grid unit, calculate the proportion of beneficial trees to the total number of trees. From there, I will evaluate the distribution of grid scores. And for example, the lower 25% will be considered low resource. The upper 25% will be considered high resource. And the middle will be the rest, the remaining 50%. Finally, I will create an interactive map using these scores. In reference to my second goal for the project, determining the proportion of Pittsburgh apiaries that are in low, average, and high resource areas, I want to ask the question, are current registered Pennsylvania apiaries and colonies ideally placed for accessibility to existing floral resources? To accomplish this, I plan to evaluate the proportion of registered apiaries in low, medium, and high resource areas. The lower left image is a sample bell distribution curve comparing the number of apiaries and colonies to the floral resource availability. The lower right image is a cartographic representation created by another Penn State student, mapping the existing registered Pennsylvania apiaries and colonies as of April of this year. I plan to assess this proportion of registered apiaries in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, in tabular format. There are a few challenges and limitations I expect to encounter in this project. The first being the city of Pittsburgh tree data includes records of trees residing on public roadways and not the total number of trees for the city. Secondly, defining the forage resource index ranges, as sites will vary in total number of trees. This could either arise from incomplete information, or single trees may provide significant resource bonuses. For example, tree species that are beneficial providers of both pollen and nectar. And lastly, honeybees can traverse large distances up to 5 kilometers and therefore outside of the sample grid area. The images below represent some of the sample data obtained from the City of Pittsburgh Department of Public Works Forestry Division. The left image is the CSV comma-separated values file containing tree species, latitude, and longitude information, while the right image is that same data projected on a map. My anticipated results include producing an interactive gridded map of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, providing information on forage resource quality from street trees. To determine if Pittsburgh apiaries are in the optimal locations for access to floral resources, provide an applicable framework for urban cities. Currently, April 24th to the 30th is Arbor Week, where community tree canopy recovery organizations such as Tree Pittsburgh provide free trees to each child within the Pittsburgh school system. Cities can enhance, restore, and protect urban ecosystems by planting species beneficial to pollinators. And lastly, I'd like to establish a sustainable city strategy for replacing dead trees and those damaged from natural disasters and automobile accidents. For my anticipated timeline, I plan to use the month of October to acquire source data and identify and categorize trees as non-beneficial, nectar, and pollen producing. For the months of October and November, I will calculate the statistics and analysis of resource of proportion metric. This will be where I determine which areas are in high, medium, and low resource areas. November will focus on documentation of the results and provide recommendations for further study. And finally, in December, I will prepare my report and presentation. I wanted to include a slide about future applications of geographic information systems and remote sensing. Due to the increased access and availability to hyperspectral and very high resolution imagery, there are increased technological advancements in machine learning and deep learning models. Through object-based image analysis techniques, we are capable of identifying flowering plant and tree canopy samples on a species or genus level using spectral, texture, elevation, and thematic data parameters, which would be capable of replacing the need for cataloged information and having to identify thousands of tree samples individually, such as the data presented in this capstone proposal. There are a few potential presentation venues for this research, including national conferences, such as the American Beekeeping Federation Conference, the Eastern Apicultural Society Annual Conference, the Entomological Society of America, as well as some state and local associations, such as the Pennsylvania State Beekeepers Association, Berg Bees, a Pittsburgh Beekeepers Association, and the Center for Pollinator Research website, where the research could be featured as an article. My references. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Don. That was really cool. Yeah, any questions for Don?
I have two questions. First, we're going to do any field verification to check the accuracy of the tree list. Second, are there any specific reasons why a 1 kilometer grid cell size was selected? I will be unable to check the verification of the tree species. So we're just going on the verification of the city of Pittsburgh. And the 1 kilometer grid was to allow sample sizes big enough to allow for the errors of maybe having grids that don't have too many trees, or sample areas that may have more than others. And that's just going to be a trial and error. I think the 1 kilometer grid is it's roughly 3 square miles. So it's big enough to have enough data, and not so big enough that we can track different grids surrounding the pollinator forage resources.
Don, when you were referring to another project, you mentioned DNA meta barcoding, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I just have to ask, hopefully you know something more about that. Sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
I think it was more just about the genetic and chemical makeup of the pollen, as seen in that in that graphic I showed on a previous slide. There's so many different variations in pollen, and they all have because it's the genetic material used for the reproduction of plants. And there's just unfortunately I didn't look too much into it, but I just know that that's how they they identified the pollen by the species of the flower.
Am I
resource.
allowed to say anything here? I'm Dawn's
Please
advisor on
speak.
this.
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, DNA metabarcoding, you can use it for any sort of species identification. You're just, you PCR up regions of the genome, so like specific genes that are conserved across species, but there's enough variation that you can specifically identify different species from it. So you can amplify them broadly, sequence it, and then you know what species of plants were represented in the pollen ball that you would get off of a forager. So it's like a really easy and fast way to be able to like sample across a lot of bees that you would capture, or from pollen that's coming back to a colony, and finding out what they were foraging on in the landscape.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christina. That's really cool. Other questions for Dawn?
Does the amount of hives / number of bees in an apiary have relevance in the study? If so, is that a factor considered when pairing with a high or low pollen area? I think that's kind of the data I'm interested in looking at. I do have access to the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture registered apiaries. Unfortunately, I will be unable to cartographically show that in a map, but I will be using that in tabular form. So I do have information for the entire state of Pennsylvania, especially Allegheny County, the number of apiaries and the number of colonies in the area. So that is something that is one of the second goals of my objectives, considering when I'm pairing the high and low pollen areas. Yes. Would you be able to export any data from the application? Maybe you told us in Beescape is a project working with one of Christina's project, actually. So I will not be using any information from Beescape. Beescape looks more at an agricultural landscape, and I'm going to be focusing more on the urban areas and ecosystems. So I will not be using Beescape data.
And just to kind of jump in again, sorry, Don, I'm like obnoxious, but we hope like, that the kind of layers that Don is creating, we could actually incorporate into Beescape. So sort of more augmenting Beescape in these, again, in these urban areas, if there was an easy way to be able to take this city tree data and then, more broadly than just Pittsburgh.
So in addition to that, incorporating it into Beescape, I was wondering what sort of outcome would you expect or hope to see resulting from your project, Don?
In addition to my anticipated results, I think
Yeah,
I would just
like in terms of a real world, somebody acting on the results of your work here. What would you like to see happen?
I would like to see this being used as an applicable framework for all urban cities, for land managers and city planners to better plan out their city based on the availability of floral forage for pollinator species. I think this can go beyond urban cities. It can go into agricultural settings. I want this to be more as a tool. For this as a strategy, to serve as a strategy for land planners and even just regular gardeners or beekeepers. It'd be interesting to know whether or not this data affects whether or not they put their apiaries and colonies in specific locations or not.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Any last questions for Don?
Ooh, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So Don, one of the issues we had with Beescape was that, we actually did a workshop on it with beekeepers and growers and conservationists, and they all really did not like the interface. And so we're like reworking it now to try to make it more user-friendly and more addressing the things that people really are interested in. So could you see a way that you could, if you make this sort of interactive portal, like an easy way to test how beekeepers would interface with it, so you could sort of understand if it's getting the information that you want to them?
I definitely think we could do that. I mean, I hadn't considered that in the proposal, but yes, I think some user testing and some surveying would be beneficial to this project and also to Beescape.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Don. That was really nice. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
And our last presenter for today is going to be Dustin Coburn, who's going to talk to us about Stafford County, Virginia, I believe, their comprehensive plan and its influence on transportation. You all set, Dustin?
Yes, sir. I'm all ready to go. Let me share my screen here. All right. Can we see that? Oh, wait a second.
Here it
Should be good
comes.
now. Okay. All set?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Great. All right. Good morning or good afternoon now. My name is Dustin Coburn. I'm in the MGIS program in my second year. So my project is focused on Stafford County, Virginia, and specifically transportation. So what I'll be doing is a retrospective and predictive review of the comprehensive plan set forth by Stafford County and some of the factors influencing transportation. So my advisor is Dr. Stephen Matthews, giving me a lot of great information, a lot of great drive forward on this, and really helped me kind of scope in the plan from what was really just a large scale idea and helped me narrow it into transportation. So what you're seeing here is Chatham Bridge on Route 3 in Stafford County, Virginia, and that's crossing the Rappahannock River. Just some background on Stafford County. It's existed since 1664. The Rappahannock River is especially important both in the early settlement of the United States and also in the Civil War. So Chatham Bridge is really a unique name because it's near the Chatham House. Chatham House is a building that was used by George Washington during the Revolution, and it was also entered by Abraham Lincoln. So it has a distinction of being the only known building where those two famous presidents have actually been. So a quick overview of the presentation we're going to go through today. I wanted to put this map here to just orient Stafford County, Virginia in the United States. It's really important also to note that Interstate 95 running from Maine to Florida along the East Coast is the main thoroughfare for the East Coast and touches most of the major cities. So you'll see there on the right, you have the yellow pop-out map, and it has Stafford Regional Airport. I-95 is there in red, and then also Route 1 is an important aspect of Stafford County transportation. They're running parallel to Interstate 95. So why Stafford County? We'll talk a little bit about why Stafford County is important and why it is a key location in the Mid-Atlantic. Talk a little bit about factors including influencing transportation, some of the data resources, some of the data analysis, how we're going to go about that, the timeline, some additional considerations, anticipated results, and then with references page. So staying on this map for just a second on the right side, Stafford County is about 25 miles south of Washington, D.C., and about 50 miles north of Richmond, giving it pretty decent commuting access to two major areas. There's also commuters that go to the surrounding counties around Stafford. A little bit of that I-95 corridor. It's 1,917 miles long, like I said, going from Maine to Florida. So the average daily traffic in the entire corridor is about 72,000, with the high reaching over 300,000. So it really is a major thoroughfare. Approximately 10,000 trucks, commercial vehicles go up and down the highway. The anticipation is by 2035, your daily traffic is going to be over 133,000 vehicles per day, including over 20,000 commercial trucks. So it's really important that transportation is improved and prepared for that anticipated load, because as the interstate stands now, it can't handle the load. Why Stafford County? we discussed a little bit, it's located between Washington, D.C. and Richmond and has great commuting to both. Without traffic, they're both within an hour. It's directly adjacent to Interstate 95. Interstate 95 bisects Stafford, and there are multiple exits off of Stafford reaching Interstate 95. So it's not only a thoroughfare going north to south, it's also a great place to do business along Interstate 95. The county has a strong commitment to economic growth. The county is investing in bringing large business in to support their economic growth. You see there on the right, the Amazon delivery truck. Amazon is closing in on finishing their second center in Stafford County. The second center is going to actually be a distribution center. The first is a data center. There's anticipation that more will come in with time, as Stafford County has recently rezoned a large area of land near Centerport, where the Amazon facility is located, for an additional 2 million square feet of warehouse and commercial space. Currently, the largest employer in Stafford County is Geico. Geico has a large corporate office here in the area. Stafford County has a population of about 156,000 and is growing. The population grew exponentially starting in 1990. We're seeing over 50% growth between 1990 and 2000. Again, over 50% growth from 2000 to 2010. It's slowed down somewhat, but it's still growing at over 20%. So it is continually growing. Stafford is famously the birthplace of George Washington. It has a lot of history in the country, including the fabled chopping down of the cherry tree by George Washington. It is where his boyhood home is, and not far from Mount Vernon, where he spent most of his life. Captain John Smith also sailed up the Potomac and landed in Stafford County, where he met Pocahontas, and that story went the way it did. Like I said, Stafford was founded in 1664. It was really named after Staffordshire, England, and established for fisheries, tobacco plantations, ironworks, and flour mills to supply Great Britain during the colonial period. Private and public employers. I already spoke a little bit about Amazon and Geico. Amazon may become the largest employer, but it is one of the fastest growing employers, but Geico is currently the top employer. The other top employers in the county are Stafford County Schools, U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, U.S. Department of Defense, and then the county as a whole. It's an interesting mix of businesses and private and public employees and type of businesses. The largest group of workers work in public administration, which is often your government workers working for the Department of Defense and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Stafford County has access to 3 international airports: Dulles International, Reagan International, Richmond International, all within 60 minutes. There's Amtrak and Virginia Railway Express commuting trains. There's freight trains that move through the county. Stafford County has nationally ranked schools, low crime, and low price real estate, especially considering the area. So Stafford County's commitment to growth focuses on corporate headquarters, cybersecurity and technology, data centers, and then warehouse and distribution. The county is doing this by keeping real estate tax low, business tax low, keeping utility costs low, and converting land use to support business development. Stafford County is a smart community. It is only 55 miles from a peering point, which hosts 70% of the world's daily internet traffic with a latency of 0.93 to 1.22 milliseconds. This is important because this is what's going to bring in the cyber security and technology because of quick access to internet and telecommunications. Factors influencing transportation. Change in land use. Like we spoke about, Stafford County is adjusting land use as needed so they can encourage commercial growth, and to support commercial growth, they're converting land that was previously not zoned for housing. Stafford's also being careful not to allow for too many cluster communities. Population growth. As said, approximately 156,000 and growing slowly. and so 2020 is growing at about 21%. Economic climate growth. Stafford County has a median household income of 111,000, putting it in the top 20 of the nation. Had three largest industries of public administration, professional, scientific, and technical services, and healthcare social assistance. Revenue and funding. The FY budget for the entire county is $700 million. $4.9 million is set aside for ongoing transportation projects. A factor that assists Stafford County is investment by the Virginia Department of Transportation and the Federal Department of Transportation to improve the roads going through the county. Technology advancements. Stafford County is working with a responsive transportation system. Stafford County is forward thinking when it comes to transportation because they understand what you're seeing on the right. That's Interstate 95 heading south out of Stafford. And it is one of the busiest roadway. It is the busiest, highest traffic roadway in the country. INRIX Roadway Analytics operated a cloud-based traffic data analysis study focused on 25 US cities, and the Interstate 95 in Stafford was the most trafficked from that study. Multimodal facilities is something Stafford County is interested in. Right now, it's a heavily commuting area and often by single vehicle. Primary data source. This is the Stafford County Comprehensive Plan. It was completed in 2016 and goes through 2036. The obvious concern is the changes brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic that weren't known about when the plan was put in place. Some of the other data sources are the Stafford County GIS portal. This is a portal operated by the county and maintained. There's multiple agencies that contribute to the portal, and it can host information from state, local, and federal entities. The Virginia Department of Transportation GIS portal is GIS data specifically from the Virginia Department of Transportation. So this information is, you'll see in the next couple of slides that I've started using to help identify traffic. The Virginia Open Data Portal, it is more generalized data, not specifically to traffic, but will help inform traffic. US Census American Community Survey, and the University of Virginia Weldon Cooper Center for Public Service. So the University of Virginia Weldon Cooper Center is a lot of demographic data that'll help inform the analysis. So this is a quick look at a couple of pieces of analysis we've already gone through. We're going to look at historic, current, and projected transportation data, economic data, land use and property value, demographics, and educational institutions. Demographics can be a little challenging within the context of transportation, so we use educational institutions and their data to help aggregate that information. The top graph you see on the right is the commuters in Stafford. In orange is Stafford County, in gray is the United States average. On average, Stafford County commuters go 38 minutes to and from work every day, with over 11% conducting what's called the super commute at 90+ minutes. The national average, for reference, is about 25 minutes of commuting time. Now, the graph on the bottom right really is one thing that Stafford County is trying to address. This is how commuters are getting to work. Notably, at the very top is drove alone, and it's at the very top by a wide margin. Almost 73% of commuters in Stafford County are driving alone to work. Stafford County, because of traffic and road use and the need to update roads to multi-lane and larger roads, is investing in both public transportation and anticipating there will be some work from home. It's another reason they're interested in investing so much in the connectivity and having high level bandwidth. Stafford County works directly with the FAMPO. It's the Fredericksburg Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, because transportation in Stafford County is affected by nearby Fredericksburg and Spotsylvania County. So the methodology will be to take a look at the data that was used to develop the plan from 2010 going into 2020. What did Stafford County use to plan out the road improvements and technology improvements? Next, we'll look at commerce and economic data. To identify the main commercial entities in Stafford, review Stafford County plans to entice local businesses, as we spoke about. And then the changes in land use. How are the changes in land use going to require additional transportation? Land use and property value over time. Identification of subdivisions, the effects of rising property values and home costs in relation to improvements to transportation infrastructure. Identify trends that align with transportation growth and identify reasons for lack of alignment with transportation growth. So there are a number of land use changes going in without a plan for the transportation at this time. Again, the demographics will be aggregated by educational institutions. And then take a look at the future plans of Stafford and how Stafford plans on dealing with the anticipated workload. This is some of the data we were speaking about from the Virginia Department of Transportation. This is average daily traffic from the Virginia Department of Transportation. The purple down the center is Interstate 95. The red is the outline of Stafford County, and the orange are more heavily trafficked roads, and the yellow are more minor traffic roads. So as expected, the major highways and roads are the most trafficked, and it slowly works its way down as you come off the main roads and get into the neighborhoods. So we'll review the data at a 10-year interval beginning in 2000. Create overview products to geographically depict the data working within ArcGIS Pro. So what we want to do is depict the change, depict the growth of the road network, depict the growth of the multimodal facilities and the railway network. Compare and identify growth using Tableau to create charts. So a great way to inform this data, especially working across time, since we work across multiple years, is to create charts showing the either density and the growth. The county can be split up by census tracts for this purpose. Geographically depict and compare the growth and transportation and infrastructure expanding. Again, using ArcGIS Pro to depict how it's changing and then become somewhat predictive in the future and start to anticipate the changes. Notice in the top of Stafford County, there's a large blank area where there's no data. This is Quantico Marine Corps Base. It's bisects Interstate 95 and will become an important part of my analysis. Project timeline. In February, we began Geography 596A and developed a plan. Presenting the plan today. Initial data review and analysis, build a report and template graphic templates. So through this summer, I intend on gathering more data and starting to work with the data and start to identify trends and start to identify where the information is going to take me and where the information looks like it's going in the future. And then also build some templates so we can build out graphics and ensure that we can demonstrate the change and what we're finding. In August, I'm beginning Geography 586, Geographic Information Analysis. I anticipate that this is going to help me gain some skills and information that will improve my analysis of spatial relationships of transportation and economic growth, schools, residences. I'll implement and improve techniques that I have. And in September and October, I'll complete my data analysis. In November, I'll prepare my report in geographic products. And in December, I plan on presenting a full capstone project. I'm not sure where we're presenting yet, but I'll identify that before then. Additional considerations. So how do we differentiate Interstate 95 low traffic from through traffic? Is Quantico Marine Base Quantico Marine Base is within Stafford County? Should it be included in the analysis? What is the significance of surrounding areas, specifically Fredericksburg and Independence City? Fredericksburg is not tied to Stafford County or Spotsylvania County. The county to its north and south. It does play a major role in the areas, and it is a major area of commerce, and it's a large area where a lot of people live, so transportation comes to both counties. And how will the COVID-19 pandemic shift Stafford County's goals and plans? This is one of the main things that I really want to add in and answer is Stafford County going to change their plans and goals? The anticipation is that there will be more people working from home and remote working than before the COVID-19 pandemic. So will Stafford County be able to tailor back some of their plans because there will be fewer commuters? Anticipated results, Stafford County is going to continue the economic and upward population growth. Additional businesses entering Stafford County will cause the county to increase investment in transportation infrastructure. Stafford County will continue to invest in public transit and multimodal facilities. I think this is really key. Stafford County has invested in trains, bus transit, and would like to get further into public transit. And I would like to identify the areas where they can do that by identifying the locations with the best opportunities for people to conveniently access those type of facilities. And I believe the county will see a minor decrease due to the increase in remote work brought on the COVID-19 pandemic. Stafford County is home to a significant number of government workers, and the government has shown an interest in conducting more remote work following the pandemic. I think Stafford County will use these goals to set forth iterative changes to the comprehensive plan and make and adjust. These are my references for the project, and I have more that can be provided upon request. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Dustin. Any questions for Dustin?
As a former Northern Virginia resident, this is a great proposal. Will you be conducting cost distance analysis to determine least costly path for predictive developments and growth networks? Thanks, Don. That's a really great question. That's actually something I'm really interested in. So the least cost distance will be ideal for commuting to the major metropolitan areas, both Washington, D.C. and Richmond. What I'm really interested in is the interconnectivity of Stafford County between the neighboring counties. What we're seeing is a lot of entities are moving out away from DC, but wanting to stay in the immediate area. So you're seeing investment in Prince William County and Loudoun County and these other surrounding areas. And I believe that as we see those continue to grow, we'll start to see businesses using processes like cost distance to determine where they're going to grow. So they'll take a county like Stafford County that has a 38% of the workers have advanced degrees. So that would be valuable information to them to stay within commuting distance. So I think that's absolutely something that I'd like to include in the predictive analysis. Two questions. Can you talk more about how you anticipate utilizing demographic data in your project? So demographic data is something that I have really been trying to figure out how to best use. I don't think it can be ignored. So one thing that comes with living in the National Capital Region is that there are people from all different backgrounds, not just in the country, but also throughout the world. So I believe that transportation needs do have a cultural aspect. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to use the American Community Survey demographic data and see if I can relate transportation projects, land use, and neighborhood development to demographics in areas. I think that it's a really good opportunity to use schools to aggregate this data, because the schools innately do require the transportation service and do have to have transportation before they can be established. Well, some of these other smaller neighborhoods and other entities don't necessarily require that. So that's how I plan on going after that. More detail how demographic data you utilize would be aggregated. But oh, well, there we go. I didn't read the second question initially. So yeah, see, I see schools are really good at tend to be really good at reporting their demographic data. So it's really more than anything it's a dependable area that I can use to identify and get a really good look at who's here and what the background is. Will you consider incorporating land availability for use in predicted growth, at least from a new business growth? I assume there's a finite amount of available land for developing the county. Yes, absolutely. So land availability is a really important part of my predictive side of this. So Stafford County has a unique opportunity and a unique challenge. The county is really invested in maintaining both the natural landscape of the land, and it does have some legal obligations to maintain natural resource protection areas. So the county is continuing to develop areas as they can, but they will hit a limit eventually. Really, more than anything, it's the critical resource protection areas that are going to hit their limit. Now, I think really where I'm going to be driven by this is actually west. So if you actually, I'll just flip back up here so I can look at the map. You'll notice on I-95 sort of really bisects the county right down the center. To the east of the county, it's fairly developed because it was near the water, and so it developed sooner than others. When you go to the west, there's a lot of area that's really sort of underdeveloped. So I think that's the area that is going to have the most land availability and that staff is going to be able to take the most advantage of. Also, there's not as much critical resource protection area out there. So I believe that that's going to be a key part of my predictive growth, is seeing what the transportation and land use and land change is going to do to the west side of the county.
Dustin, sorry if I didn't catch this, but do you have a relationship with the county that led you to take on this project, or are you planning to hand this off to them when you're done?
So ideally, I would love to. I'd love to get with the county. I don't actually work for the county or have really relations with the county. I work for the Marine Corps on Quantico, doing GIS work. But as I was looking around the county, I was trying to figure out something that I could do close to home, because that was just really of interest to me. And this really caught my attention when I started reading their comprehensive plan. So what I would really love to do is I would really love to be part of their iterative development. So they've already identified within the plan itself that the plan is going to be reviewed. It's a 20-year plan running from 2016 through 2036. They've already identified that there's going to be intermediate changes and that they'll review periodically. I'd love to be part of one of the reviews and help drive forward with my research what we possibly see as an improvement, or how I can help identify the areas that either need growth, need more investment, or areas that maybe don't need so much growth and investment, that our resources can be reallocated.
Yeah, I think that would be great if you'd be able to contribute to the local government in that way. Hopefully they would appreciate it.
I'm hoping to make an introduction over the course of my project. So as I'm going through, I'm lucky that Stafford County makes a ton of great data available, but I'm also going to contact the county GIS office and start to see if I can build a relationship to just really gain any sort of data that they have, but also have a good understanding of what their plans are. So I'm hoping to build a relationship where I might be able to do that.
Yeah, that sounds smart. I just have a comment. This struck me as a project where potentially an Esri story map might be a good way to present your results when you're done.
I
In case you've ever worked with one of them.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic idea. That's one of the things that has been I've gone back and forth on a little bit, is my presentation method. I know that I will present create some maps and graphics, story map. I think that would be an ideal medium for it.
Cool. Any other questions for Dustin? All right. Well, I put in the chat the link to the peer review form again. I want to encourage everyone to please fill it out, you GEOG 596A students. But as always, this was a really good good set of engaging talks across a range of topics. Thanks to our presenters. Thanks to other folks who are in attendance. And I want to wish the best of luck to all of our 596A students on completing your work and finishing your degrees. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.